Thanks, guys. As you just heard, my name's Zane. You might have seen me walking around with a wee baby, and Kimmy, my partner. We are looking, or not looking, we're moving out here to Mangarawa in the next 30 days. We've been working on an agreement with Greg and Rachel for a while now. And yeah, it's now at the exciting part where we've been out here and, renovating the little small apartment in the red barn so we can live there and start, had the tarp down for a bit over 2 months now. So the early stages of setting up a permaculture farm, and we're going to do a wee market garden in this section and just see where the rest of the property grows. Obviously, one of the crucial sort of parts of permaculture is observation, so we haven't had that opportunity yet. So we're going to just take it nice and slow and learn about the block and learn about the land and the area and the weather, and just sort of grow with it like most people would on their own farms. So a bit about me: I have a construction background for 14 years in Australia, and we ended up here in Australia, here in New Zealand, working on my mother and father-in-law's property, just renovating a house and restoring some land, and demolishing some really large glass houses that have gone to a bit of rack and ruin, rotten timber everywhere. We managed to get, believe it or not, no one cut themselves from all the glass, but we managed to get more injuries from the brambles that had filled these glass houses than anything else. But yeah, so Kimmy, out of the two of us, is the green thumb, if you ask anyone that knows us. She's always asking me to pull over on the side of the road when she spotted a tree or a plant that she wants to get a cutting from and take it back to the greenhouse. And she studied horticulture, land conservation. She's already done a PDC. Whereas me, I'm just a guy who likes to learn through my hands and my own experience. I watch a bit of YouTube videos and, learn the fun way. So, but yeah, so we've set up a market garden on the property we're staying on at the moment. It's a little bit over a year now that we've been into that. That process was set up quite similar to what we'll do here. So, using your lasagna method and just adding organic matter to the ground instead of taking it away. Quite like what Samantha was highlighting yesterday in her talk about the forest floors. Obviously, it always just gets added on even by the animals that pass away in the forests. Very different process to what the conventional farmers are doing, which we all know. So, after a little bit of research of my own, this was very abundantly highlighted to me that this is just a way better way to work with the earth than actually just using your big equipment and tilling and all that sort of stuff. And I like the personal connection. The garden I have at the moment, I just use all the hand tools, and it's a similar setup. I don't know if anyone knows like the Jody Roebuck in Taranaki, or the Richard Perkins in Sweden, I believe he is. But just a similar idea, similar concept, small, tight little market garden. And that's for this section anyways. The rest of the farm is going to grow into an abundantly beautiful permaculture block one day. But yeah, we just set up I say small, it's a small scale commercial market garden. There were 10, 30 metre rows, so it's a bit bigger than your backyard garden, and it can actually produce a lot of vegetables, which I found out. And that experience was more so to learn a few things. One of them being, do I actually like farming? And can I actually do this? Or is it just, it's easy to learn something or watch YouTube videos and then get inspired. But what about when that immediate inspiration fades away? Have you got the commitment and the drive to actually pursue this? Is it turning into a passion rather than, just a little spurt of inspiration? So, and yeah, I ticked yes and yes on both of those things. I fell in love with the farming process, and I fell in love with the experience of being connected to my food. One of the main sort of drivers of setting up that garden also was just creating food sovereignty for my family. Being able to look after ourselves and become more sustainable within our personal little community. So that's been really cool, and that's still a very developing thing. Now I'm learning about the preserving. So just basically we're doing the whole homesteading thing, but we're at the start of it. So it's really interesting and really fun, and we're learning a lot of information. There's also, just on that, there's some, obviously everyone here is amazing, and there's so many different talents and ideas and thoughts and experience that everyone has here. So I'm the young gun that's at the start of my journey learning these processes, and I know there's some people here that have wonderful wealth of experience in this process of creating a garden like this, or even just growing vegetables at home yourself. So if you have some input or some ideas, or you do something a similar way or a different way, just speak up and share your knowledge with everyone. This experience is just really to get your hands dirty, get us out of the room and get connected to the land, and just work on something together, work on building something together. So originally we were going to just peel this all back and get into it and do all of the rows, but I didn't want to risk getting a truckload of compost delivered and then watching it run down the driveway. So we just went a bit smaller scale. It's going to be a bit more intimate. There's enough stuff to do these 2 beds, or at least get them started. I also had seedlings that I started in my greenhouse weeks ago now. We were going to do the whole thing with the Jang seeder and the seedlings and get it all going, but now we're just going to peel the plastic back over the beds after we're done so they don't wash away. But yeah, it's going to be really fun. We're just going to have to share and rotate around the tools. There's a few jobs that we're going to do. So the broad fork that you see in the middle of the paddock, I've already started the process. It's not to turn, I'm just going to go through it as if you don't know what it's about, but we're not turning the soil with the broad fork, we're just aerating it. So just put it in nice and deep to the head bar and just give it a bit of a pull back to get some air in there, and just work your way back down the row. The beds that we've set up are 75 centimeters wide, which is your standard sort of bed width for a market garden in this setting, mainly because of the tools that are commercially made around the world. They're all just suitable and universal for a bed width that wide. And then the walkway is actually something I've learnt from the garden that we have at the moment. My current garden, the walkways are 40 centimeters. This one I've actually made them 55. And the main reason for that is, well, we have an abundance of land, so I don't need to try to get real compact, but also the sumi soaker that I use, which is, if you think of your green rolls of garden hose that shoots out the water like that, it's just a commercial version of that. When you have that in the middle of the row and it irrigates the garden, if you've got celeries or kales or just anything that's taller than knee height, then the lower squirts don't actually get out to the full length that they're designed to. So yeah, we're just making it. This is my way of learning from my own experience in just the last year, just making it a little bit wider and see what happens. And we'll probably learn a lot from this little garden and expand it to the rest of the garden by the time we're ready to move on. So, but yeah, so we'll get some people rotating around the broad fork so you can all have a go. Just going down the wider, obviously the wider runs that we've got, filling the wheelbarrows with compost and then leveling out the compost. There's a heap of cardboard here. It's all still got its tape still on it, so we need people pulling the tape off all of the cardboards, because after about 8 to 9 months that tape starts coming to the surface of my beds if it's not done properly, which I also found out from the last people that helped me. So and yeah, so we can just rotate around the jobs and everyone can have a bit of fun, keep the conversations developing and keep, cultivating these real cool vibes that, Zeb and Future Whenua and we've all created. So, yeah.
Zane, can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
I see you've got the pea straw there. So what's under that? That's just the ground? Right?
Yeah, great question. So, yeah. I don't know what this grass is. It's not actually pea straw. I haven't put that down. So this was the grass. So, and thank you for bringing me back. I wanted to talk a bit more about that. About 3 months ago, I asked Greg if he can pull the cows through this whole paddock because it was like really high and just way too overgrown. I wanted to see the land a bit more. So we put the cows through, they chewed the grass down nice, obviously pooed everywhere, and then I came in with the tarp just behind that. So we covered in the grass. So it's just the natural grasses that were already here. Greg, do you know what grasses they are?
Oh, there's all sorts, foxglove, prairie grass, rye, yeah.
So nice little mix. And then the tarp, the process with the tarp is just to kill off everything to make the job easier making the beds, right? Because if you're just going to build beds straight on this, then unless you're using a really thick layer of compost mulch, then it's just going to keep growing through. So this was just a passive way to do it. Roll the tarp out. Usually you want it on for 4 to 5 months. It's only been about 3. So this, if it's on full length, this is fully cooked underneath the tarp. The worm activity, the microbiome, everything's growing in there nicely. But yeah, so we're going to get into it now. We'll just add, so it's got the carbon layer, it's got the manure. We're going to add the cardboard there just to add a barrier so nothing else grows through. And then we're going to put a nice 10 to 15 centimetre layer of compost on. Set.
I'm sorry, you just said months, but you mean weeks, don't you?
For the tarp? No, I mean months.
So this has been on for 3 months.
It's been on between 2 and 3. I can't remember the exact date, but yeah, it's already been on for 2 months now. Ideally, this tarp would stay on for about 6 months, especially through winter. If you put it on middle of winter and coming into summer, as soon as it gets hotter, it's going to process a lot quicker. But yeah, the passive way is a much slower way. Obviously, the other way of this is, the reason why we're doing this way is, as the title suggests, no-dig gardening. The process about no-dig is mainly as minimal damage to the soil as possible. And another way to do this would just be getting a tilter in and just processing the whole thing and getting it all soft and ready to roll. But obviously, then that kind of counteracts the process of wanting to do the no-dig approach. Yeah. Are there any more questions?
Yeah, when you say lasagna, what are the layers you're actually adding?
Yeah, great question. So what we're gonna do with the rest of this section is we're also gonna bring in a load of seaweed from the beach. It's coming into autumn now, so the leaves are gonna start falling. So we're gonna bring in some leaves just off this property. We're adding in the cardboard, we're adding in the compost on the very top, but really as much organic matter as we can source around, especially off this farm. So manures, leaves and seaweeds is really what we're gonna put into this. Yeah. Is there anything else you would do? I know you're into your garden.
I'm just wondering today, we're putting...
Oh yeah, today. Yeah, so today it's just going to be the cardboard and the compost.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
You'd normally do those other layers before the cardboard and compost.
Yes. Yeah. So, we'd put the cardboard down first on the ground. Obviously, depending on how the growth is with your grasses, if you kill them off properly. But the cardboard is also a barrier to stop anything else growing through. So then you'd put the other layers on top of the cardboard, and obviously finishing with the compost. Yeah.
Can you put the seaweed, just in as it is? You don't have to do anything with the seaweed or chop it up or anything?
So we put the seaweed in as it is, and I'm sure there's probably a lot of merit in actually chopping it up. It depends on which stage of the beds you're wanting to do it. When we put it in here for these beds that are going to just continue to cook over winter, then it's just going to chuck in whole seaweed. Yeah. But if you're putting into this process where we were planning on putting in some plants straight after it, then you'd probably want to help that decomposing process along by chopping it up. Yeah.
Where'd you get compost from?
So we're actually very lucky in this area. There's a company out at Napier called BioRich. Their aged compost is absolutely premium for growing veggies. We've used it in the other garden. We used it in some raised beds we set up before that garden, and it works really well. It's obviously just locally sourced from the farms and all the activity around here. So it's pretty lucky to have that source here, because they ship as far as Tauranga from Napier. So, there's a lot of miles on that compost. We'll go this side first.
Have you thought about what you might do sort of year 2 and year 3 around sort of making your own composting and bits and pieces like that?
Absolutely, yeah.
Getting truckloads of compost in all the time
Yeah, it's not ideal, is it? Yeah, exactly, and that's where we're definitely going to be. Once again, being on this specific farm with all of the local inputs, all the manure from the cows, the leaf litter from all of the wonderful forests out there. There's lots, and the grasses too. There's also local farms where they make, cut their own grasses. So we can source a lot of local inputs, and we are absolutely planning to make our own compost.
That's going to take quite a bit of compost.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that would take 20 cubic meters of compost. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
4 weeks later it'd be gone.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, so the compost, so once again, going back to the beds that we've set up at the farm we're on at the moment, they're almost 1.5 years old now, and there's still, I put on a 15 centimetre layer of compost, so it was double this, and there's still about 7 centimetres of compost on that layer, and I haven't added anything to it yet. Except for small amounts of compost that we've produced, in our sort of residential compost, units around our farms. But yeah, the process ideally would be big scale compost. There's obviously going to be a fair bit of waste coming from this. There's lots of local sources. Making compost is obviously very labour intensive. So there's also that balance that I'm trying to figure out as well, because at the moment on our current property, it's Kimmy and myself, and we've now got a new baby. which he's not going to be turning compost piles until another couple of years, I think. But you know, so actually having, so machinery is the next option. Would be, all right, how do we do this successfully with, you know, balancing our time and having, there's a tractor on site, but maybe I get a bucket for that tractor if I can fit some extra machinery onto the locally, you know, what's here, then we can actually process compost at a greater level. But I also know Brett, standing at the back, who's living here and working on the property, he's got a big interest in compost, and making compost is something that he's been talking about doing and developing on this property. So I would probably be his #1 customer, if that's a thing. Yeah.
What I do in my garden, I've got quite a bit of extensive garden on the farm, is I make compost to feed to the worm farm.
Wow, that's awesome.
6 weeks, 5-6 weeks, so you're not actually doing all the physical labour. And for one shovel of worm castings is 3 or 4 shovels of compost.
Wow.
So, and because it's so hard to find a food source for your worm farm, like enough bulk compost materials, but if you compost specifically for a worm farm, you're going to get more punch for your pellet.
Absolutely. That makes sense. Yeah, see, and like this process, like I highlighted at the start, I'm at the start of my journey. I'm learning a lot of this on the go, and I'm just getting into this whole process and the idea about regenerative farming. Like our main source of income is a mushroom farm called Good Vibes Fungi that Kimmy and I set up. And when we set up this business, we set it up from the start with sustainability as our main focus. The mushrooms we selected, they easily grow on waste and byproducts that we can source locally within New Zealand. And then we just went out and started finding these sources because we also wanted to grow them organically, which adds another level to it, obviously. So we found a relationship with Goodness Breads in town in Hastings. They mill their own buckwheat, which they buy within New Zealand. So, and then their buckwheat hulls is a waste product which he sells sometimes to, he described, ladies who make yoga pillows. So it makes very soft filling for pillows apparently. But yeah, so we started growing on his waste product. We closed his loop. We use pine pellets from the New Zealand milling industry, mainly because when they make the pellets, they're semi-sterilised through the heat and the pressure to pelletise them. So that gives us, because we also set up the farm to do your sort of low-tech mushroom cultivation, so we're not putting massive amounts of money into sterilising our substrates. We just use lime hydrate in our water to pasteurize the substrate, and then we use a large amount of spawn to you know, grow the mushrooms we want. But yeah, when we set up this business, we set it up with that in mind. So, and that's been a massive learning curve, which has kind of lent into this process now of like, how can we do something like that, but with vegetables, and, you know, learning about, you know, it's easy to just buy compost in, especially if it's local, but, you know, learning about the effects of just buying that compost in, do you know what I mean? Yeah, it's something that's definitely growing.
Suggestion would be to find the guys who go around cleaning out under wool sheds around here.
Oh, really?
A bit of business. And often, you know, farmers just want to get rid of it, which I always find amazing, but they do. They want a pile of...
And it's just a big pile of wool?
Well, no, it's sheep.
Oh, sheep droppings. Gotcha. Perfect.
And often you can get that for nothing.
Yeah, I bet you probably can.
Good to cook that though, because you often got a lot of seeds in it.
Oh yeah, no, you wouldn't put it straight on, no. What we do, we mix it in with, we get truckloads of pine peelings from the local mill and mix it in with the pine peelings and a lot of other stuff. But.
And actually Grape Mark's a good one too, from the wineries.
Oh, really?
You know,
yeah. See, and that's one of...
And the seeds from the grapes.
One of the good things obviously about this area is the access that we have from, you know, the different food industries that are around here. There's lots of base materials that we can incorporate.
Just gonna put your hand up for it.
Yeah, and it's just, well, yeah, it's just also asking about it, you know, like just opening a conversation and just saying, hey, what do you guys do with this? Okay, so they do that, but would you be interested in sharing some of it with, you know, a local farm? We want to do this, and you might just hit that little spot of, you know, a bit more of a social development area or community development process.
There's a group called Sustainable and Attainable in Hawke's Bay, and they've got a whole stream, and they've done a waste audit on lots of companies, and within that's horticulture industry, and so there's a whole stream focused on organic waste.
Really?
And looking for places to put their waste.
No way. Sustainable is attainable? Oh, cool. Please do. Thank you. That sounds very helpful. See, and it's just like that. We started a conversation and there's just things coming at us. But yeah, you had a question, friend?
Yeah, just what's your plan for the produce for the market, or
Yeah, so we have a spot. So with Good Vibes Fungi, we're at the Hawke's Bay Farmers Market in Hastings. We also have the spot to sell the organic vegetables there as well, because we're producing it at the moment. So we'll sell at the farmers market. Locally though, there's a lot of housing development happening just across the river, and we want to just keep it as local as possible. I'm literally going to knock on doors with boxes and give them a box of veggies and just try to get weekly veggie deliveries. So I can just load the van up, drive 2Ks, deliver 30 boxes, and that's it. So, and then of course we're going to supply food for the Eco Lodge and anyone who stays there. You know, nearly every weekend throughout the year, the Eco Lodge has people in it. So, you know, having a veggie box option on the menu for the, you know, accommodation is definitely something that will help out. So people don't have to bring a box of food from wherever they come. Yeah. Have you got any ideas around the produce from here?
Oh no, just I guess farmers markets makes a lot of sense, but just that.
Yeah.
Great to customers seems.
It is, yeah. And one of the things we've noticed over the last 3 years is, so when we actually set up the mushroom business, our first idea was we wanted to do organic veggies on the beautiful farm that we're on at the moment, and it's like right out of town. It's the first rural street out of Hastings. So it was a really good location, really good idea, but at that time there were about 4 or 5 organic growers in the area, so the market was quite flooded and saturated. And that's what led us towards the other ideas. But since then, all of those farms that were there at that time have sold, moved on, or died in some cases. So there's now, at the market, there were 3 veggie stalls when we started. There's only one, another one just started this week. You know, there's us, small scale, and them. So it's weird, the growers are slowing down. You know, we've got JJ's at Napier in the area. One of the ladies was here yesterday. And then, but they're also, you know, the farm we're setting up is about the scale of theirs. So, you know, there's enough food to feed a fair bit of people, but yeah.
Should we work and talk?
Yeah, let's do that. So, yeah, we've got a few jobs to go. So if someone wants to jump on the Broad Fork and just start working their way down, and then we'll fill the wheelbarrows. We've got a fair few people tearing plastic off the cardboards.